The chilling certainty of her betrayal was a physical ache, a cold hand gripping Anya's heart, tighter than any debt collector's fist. She was no longer a person, not even a daughter. She was a ledger entry, a currency of desperation traded for a fleeting promise of survival for a kin who had already abandoned her in spirit. Her village, a cluster of crumbling stones and whispered judgments, watched her with eyes that held pity for their own plight, but none for hers. Every gust of wind carried the metallic scent of impending doom, of ancient magic stirring beyond the blighted fields, and the crushing weight of generations of debt felt heavier than the mountains themselves. This was her world, a prison built of duty and despair, and she was its most worthless inmate. Before we fully descend into Anya's world, tell us your name, where you're watching from, and what time it is for you right now in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single beat of this epic tale. Anya's days were a monotonous cycle of grueling labor, her hands calloused from tilling soil that refused to yield, her back perpetually aching from the burdens of a family's failing legacy. The encroaching blight had painted their once fertile lands in hues of sickly brown and grey, mirroring the slow decay of hope within her own chest. Each night, as the meager firelight flickered across the faces of her emaciated relatives, she saw the silent accusations, the unspoken blame for a fate she hadn't chosen, but was forced to bear. Her secret yearning for a life of agency, for a place where she might be seen and valued beyond her utility, was a fragile ember she guarded fiercely, hidden beneath layers of quiet resignation and a fierce, untapped resilience. Tell us where you're watching from and subscribe, because this story is just beginning. Now, let's continue. The elder's words still echoed in the hollow chambers of her mind, a death knell disguised as a desperate plea. Anya, for the good of all. But the good of all meant her sacrifice, her body a commodity, sold to the treacherous dark fae whose very name conjured images of shadows and screams. The horrifying reality had settled over her like a shroud, suffocating any lingering breath of hope. This wasn't just economic ruin, it was the ultimate betrayal, a severing of every tie she held sacred, leaving her adrift in a sea of terror. Her secret desire, to be recognized as more than a pawn, now seemed destined to be extinguished in the cold, grasping hands of malevolent magic, a chilling premonition of a fate far worse than mere death. The air grew heavy with a palpable dread as the ominous hour approached, each shadow stretching longer, darker. Across the forgotten border village, a profound stillness had descended, broken only by the rustle of dead leaves and the frantic beat of Anya's own heart, a drum against her ribs. She felt the eyes of her kin, not meeting hers, but darting away, laden with a shame that was theirs, yet felt entirely her own. The cold certainty of her impending departure permeated every fiber of her being, a glacial grip tightening around her lungs, making each breath a conscious effort. Her skin prickled, attuned to the subtle shifts in the wind, anticipating the sinister arrival, the moment her life would cease to be her own and become merely a grotesque transaction. Then, as if summoned by her deepest fears, the twilight mists thickened, swirling with an unnatural energy that made the ancient trees groan. From the veil of deepening shadows, figures began to coalesce, tall and gaunt, their forms indistinct, yet radiating an undeniable malice. The air grew frigid, tasting of ash and forgotten curses, as their cruel, elongated hands emerged, reaching, beckoning. Anya's breath caught in her throat, a silent scream trapped behind clenched teeth, her vision blurring with unshed tears. This was it, the end, the terrifying certainty of becoming an eternal plaything for beings of pure darkness. Just as their ominous forms solidified at the edge of the blighted fields, the very ground beneath her feet began to tremble with an unearthly roar. The earth's deep tremor was not the sinister magic of the dark fae, but something else entirely. a force that ripped through the oppressive gloom with blinding speed. A shimmering wave of silver and green burst from the ancient woods, forms coalescing from the mist, not with malice, but with an otherworldly grace. Anya, frozen in terror, watched as the grotesque figures of the dark fae recoiled, their cruel laughter dying in their throats, replaced by guttural snarls of frustration. This was an intervention, abrupt and incomprehensible, a dazzling display of power that momentarily eclipsed her personal horror. Yet, even as hope flickered, it was laced with a fresh wave of dread. Salvation rarely came without a steep, unforeseen price, especially for someone as cursed as she felt. Her earliest memories were not of childish games or whispered bedtime stories, but of the ceaseless hum of worry, the brittle tension that permeated their crumbling cottage. The debt, a shadow stretching back generations, was a phantom limb of their lineage, constantly throbbing, reminding them of their inherent lack. Her father, once a proud man, had withered under its weight, his spirit slowly eroded by failed harvests and the callous indifference of the moneylenders. Anya, barely old enough to carry a water pail, had understood the silent language of their poverty, the way it stripped away dignity, leaving only the raw, exposed nerves of survival. She learned early that her worth was tied not to her spirit, but to her capacity for labor, a bitter lesson etched deep into her young heart. The village, her supposed home, offered no solace, only a mirror reflecting her family's disgrace. Whispers followed her like persistent shadows. The debt girl, the cursed lineage, their words sharper than any winter wind. She remembered the sting of being overlooked at communal feasts, the way other children were pulled away from her, as if her very presence was contagious. This constant, insidious rejection had hollowed out a space within her, making her believe that she was inherently flawed, destined for an existence of quiet servitude. Dreams of personal happiness, of a hand held in tenderness, had long since withered, replaced by the grim necessity of simply enduring, of being useful enough to avoid complete obliteration. Romance, in her blighted world, was a luxury she couldn't even fathom. How could a girl burdened by such a colossal debt, tainted by the shame of her family, ever inspire genuine affection? Her hands, calloused and rough from endless toil, spoke not of delicate beauty but of hardship. Her eyes, often downcast, held the weariness of an old soul. She had witnessed the fleeting, transactional nature of love in her village, where alliances were forged out of convenience, not passion. To hope for anything more, for a deep, soul-stirring connection, felt like a cruel joke, a dangerous fantasy that would only lead to further disappointment and reinforce her already profound sense of unworthiness. The leader of this shimmering vanguard was an impossibility made flesh, King Liraen of the Verdant Court. He moved with an ancient grace that spoke of sunlit glades and untamed power, his eyes, the color of deep forest leaves, sweeping over the scene with an authority that brooked no argument. He was a stark, dazzling contrast to the encroaching darkness, a beacon of bewildering beauty in her nightmare. Anya, still trembling, found herself caught in his penetrating gaze, a fleeting moment where fear mingled with an undeniable, primal awe. She was no longer just a girl about to be claimed by shadows. She was an object of scrutiny for a king whose presence seemed to bend reality itself. With a voice like the rustle of autumn leaves and the command of a mountain gale, King Liraen declared her not a captive of the dark fae, but a strategic asset, a living symbol of a stolen payment. His words, though rescuing her from one horror, plunged her immediately into another, a new form of ownership, cloaked in royal decree. Anya felt a terrifying shift, from being a pawn for her village to a pawn for an elven king. The faces of the retreating dark fae twisted with fury, their malevolent eyes promising retribution, not just on Liraen, but on her, the unwitting catalyst. Her rescue was a condemnation, a bizarre twist of fate that ensured her life would remain anything but her own. Before she could fully process the dizzying turn of events, strong yet gentle, elven hands guided her away from the blighted fields, away from the familiar misery of her village. The world around her blurred, a kaleidoscopic rush of verdant greens and shimmering golds, as she was swept into a vortex of bewildering elegance. She glimpsed an array of majestic elven warriors, their armor gleaming, their movements silent and swift. Her mind reeled, trying to grasp the enormity of her situation. She was being taken, spirited away to a realm unknown, to the heart of an elven kingdom she could barely conceive. What fate awaited her there, in the gilded cages of a king who saw her as nothing more than a symbol? In this channel, I bring you the most epic and intense romance stories. Every week, a new world, a new impossible passion. The Verdant Court was a realm woven from moonlight and ancient magic, a stark, breathtaking contrast to Anya's blighted world. At its heart sat King Liraean, not merely on a throne, but embodying it, a living monument to centuries of Fey sovereignty. His form was lean, sculpted with the ethereal grace of a willow in a storm, yet radiating an undeniable, formidable power that crackled in the air around him. His skin, like polished ivory, held the faint shimmer of starlight, and his hair, the color of twilight moss, fell in intricate braids around a face carved with both timeless beauty and the deep furrows of ancient burdens. His eyes, twin pools of emerald and shadow, pierced through any pretense, holding the wisdom of forgotten ages and the sharp glint of a warrior king. He was an enigma, a force of nature draped in velvet and authority, an unyielding pillar in a world teetering on the brink. Yet, even a king of such formidable presence could not escape the relentless gnawing of political turmoil. Liraean carried the weight of a fracturing kingdom on his broad shoulders, a realm beset by ancient feuds and fragile treaties that threatened to unravel with every passing season. His people, a proud and demanding race, clamored for stability, for an heir to secure their lineage, and for powerful alliances to solidify his precarious reign against the encroaching darkness. The whispers of discontent from dissenting noble houses, the subtle machinations of rival courts, and the ever-present threat of the burgeoning Dark Fey rebellion were a constant symphony of pressure, eroding his peace and demanding ruthless, calculated decisions, often at great personal cost. Beneath the impenetrable veneer of the powerful monarch lay a profound, aching loneliness, a vulnerability Liran guarded with the ferocity of a dragon protecting its hoard. His destiny, woven into the very fabric of the Verdant Court, was a solitary path, demanding sacrifice and emotional detachment for the greater good of his people. He feared failure more than death itself, knowing that a misstep could plunge his realm into an abyss of chaos from which it might never recover. This burden of leadership, the constant need for strength, and the suppression of any personal weakness, had forged a deep chasm between his public persona and the man who yearned for genuine connection, leaving him isolated on his gilded throne, a king haunted by the spectre of solitude. It was this complex tapestry of duty and desperation that led him to Anya. She was not a choice born of affection, but a cold, strategic necessity, a pawn in a game far larger than either of them could fully comprehend. Liran saw in her not merely a human girl rescued from sacrifice, but an unlikely solution to his most pressing problems. Her very existence, a bridge between the fractured human and Fey realms, offered a defiant symbol against the encroaching darkness of the Dark Fey. He could elevate her, transform her from a forgotten village girl into a queen, a figurehead whose unique origins could either mend ancient rifts or spark a new, devastating conflict. Her value lay not in who she was, but in what she represented, the idea of a human queen, especially one claimed from the precipice of a Dark Fey ritual, was audacious, bordering on scandalous. Yet Lyrian recognized its inherent power. Such a union, though purely a marriage of convenience, would project an image of strength and defiance, a bold challenge to those who sought to destabilize his throne and exploit the perceived weaknesses of his kingdom. It was a calculated risk, a gamble that could either secure his reign for generations or ignite the very war he desperately sought to avert. Anya, with her quiet resilience and unknown potential, became the crucial piece in his intricate political maneuvering, a living pact designed to unite disparate factions and forge an unbreakable front against a common, insidious enemy. The weight of these considerations pressed heavily upon him, shaping his features into a mask of regal severity as he observed the reports of the new captive. Her status, a human pawn now unexpectedly in his possession, demanded immediate attention. He needed to assess her, to understand the raw material he intended to mold into his queen, and to begin the formidable task of integrating her into a court that would undoubtedly view her with suspicion and scorn. Without a moment's hesitation, his voice, though calm, resonated with an unassailable authority as he gave the command, "Bring her to me." Now, Anya, still reeling from the dizzying rescue and the bewildering journey, felt a fresh wave of ice grip her heart, convinced that her strange salvation had merely delayed an inevitable and far more terrifying punishment. The great hall of the verdant court was a dizzying expanse of living emerald and polished moonstone, its vaulted ceiling shimmering with captured starlight. Utterly alien to Anya's eyes, she stood trembling, a fragile human girl amidst towering elven guards whose gazes, though impassive, felt like a physical weight pressing down on her. Before her, at the apex of a dais carved from ancient glowing wood, sat King Lyrian. His presence was a gravitational pull, an aura of ancient power and unyielding authority that stole the air from her lungs. His eyes, twin pools of deep forest green, fixed on her with an intensity that pierced through her fear, stripping away her defenses, leaving her feeling utterly exposed, a trembling insect under a magnifying glass. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, broken only by the frantic beat of her own heart. Lyrian's gaze swept over her, a meticulous assessment that seemed to probe her very soul, searching for something beyond the terror etched on her face. He saw the calloused hands, the weary eyes, but also a flicker of an unyielding spirit, a nascent defiance beneath the layers of quiet resignation. When he finally spoke, his voice was a low timbre, like wind through ancient trees, yet it resonated with an undeniable command that made the very air vibrate. "You are Anya, the human girl," he stated, not a question but a pronouncement. A shiver traced her spine, a strange mix of fear and a grudging recognition of his formidable power. She instinctively straightened, refusing to cower, a tiny act of rebellion in the face of overwhelming might. "My kingdom is fractured," Lyrian began, his voice losing none of its authority, yet imbued with a subtle, underlying current of weary resolve. "The ancient council clamors for stability, for an heir, for alliances to fortify our borders against the escalating dark Fae threat." He gestured vaguely, his hand a blur of elegant motion, encompassing the vast, silent hall. "My destiny is woven into the very fabric of this court, demanding a path of solitude, yet my people demand a future secured. They see only a king, but I am also a guardian burdened by generations of expectation, constantly teetering on the precipice of political failure that could plunge us all into chaos." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze intensifying, making her feel as if she were the only other person in the sprawling hall. "Your unexpected arrival, Anya, is not merely an accident of fate. The Dark Fae claimed you as payment, a symbol of their growing dominion over the human realms. My intervention, though swift, has transformed you into a different kind of symbol, a living defiance against their encroaching darkness, a bridge between our fractured worlds. His words painted a stark picture of a world far more intricate and perilous than her blighted village, positioning her as an unwitting, yet crucial, piece in a grandee, dangerous game. Then came the proposal, delivered with the chilling precision of a decree. I offer you a pact, a temporary alliance forged in the crucible of necessity. You will become my queen consort, a public union that projects an image of strength and unity to my people and our enemies alike. His words were devoid of warmth, a purely transactional offer, yet the weight of them resonated through the silent hall. This will be a marriage of convenience, Anya, a political maneuver, not a bond of affection. You will lend your unexpected status to my cause, and in return, you will gain the protection of the verdant court. He paused, allowing the enormity of his words to settle, before continuing, now outlining the benefits that made her breath catch in her throat. Your village's insurmountable debt will be erased, its blight lifted through the magic of my court. You will be free from the shadow of your past, free from the judgment and the grueling labor. You will be granted a new identity, a position of power, and a life beyond anything you could have ever imagined, far from the reach of the dark fae or the despair of your former existence. It was a tantalizing offer, a cruel twist of salvation dangled before her. Anya's mind reeled, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The horror of a forced marriage, even one purely political, warred with the seductive promise of liberation. To be free of the debt, to see her kin spared, to escape the suffocating despair of her village. It was a dream she had never dared to voice. But at what cost? To be a queen, a symbol, a pawn in a more dangerous game, yet with a chance at agency, a chance to finally be seen as more than worthless. Her gaze, once downcast, slowly lifted, meeting Lerayan's, a spark of defiance beginning to ignite in her weary eyes. I accept, Anya said, her voice surprisingly steady, though a tremor ran through her veins. Lerayan's expression remained unreadable, but a subtle tension eased from his shoulders. But on one condition, your majesty. The words hung in the air, audacious and unexpected. You will not merely offer me protection and a title. You will teach me. You will teach me the ways of your court, the history of your people, and how to rule. I will not merely be a symbol. I will be a queen who understands her role, who earns the respect of her new people, and who stands as your equal, not just your pawn. Anya's audacious demand hung in the air, a silent challenge that echoed through the vast hall, momentarily eclipsing the king's own formidable decree. Lerayan's emerald eyes, which had been unreadable, now held a flicker of something akin to surprise, a subtle shift in the ancient depths of his gaze. For a fleeting instant, the mask of the unyielding monarch seemed to waver, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath the crown, caught off guard by her unexpected courage. The court, hitherto a tableau of impassive elven faces, stirred with a collective, almost imperceptible gasp, their silent judgment sharpening. Anya, despite her outward composure, felt a tremor run through her, a perilous gamble that could either solidify her position or shatter it entirely. Pushing her deeper into the abyss of elven disdain, she had staked her new life on a single, defiant condition, a desperate bid for agency. Lerayan studied her, his thoughts a maelstrom of strategic calculations and an unexpected, almost inconvenient flicker of admiration. Her demand, though bold, held an undeniable logic. A puppet queen would undermine his authority, not bolster it. A queen who understood her role, who could command respect, however grudgingly, might indeed be the potent symbol he desperately needed. The weight of his kingdom's precarious state, the incessant demands of his council, and the ever-present shadow of the dark fae's impending wrath pressed upon him. He recognized that this alliance, though born of necessity, required more than just a figurehead. His gaze hardened, the flicker of surprise replaced by a renewed resolve. Her condition was a risk, but a necessary one to secure his precarious throne. The transition was swift, a dizzying blur of silks, jewels, and hushed instructions that stripped Anya of her peasant identity and adorned her in the trappings of a queen. Elven attendants, their movements graceful and silent, transformed her, their expert hands weaving intricate braids into her hair, adorning her with shimmering fabrics that felt impossibly light, yet strangely heavy with expectation. Each piece of jewelry, each delicate embroidery, felt less like an adornment and more like a gilded cage, a stark reminder of the new, terrifying role she was about to embody. Her mind still grappled with the enormity of Liraean's acceptance, the realization that her gamble had paid off. Yet the terrifying uncertainty of her new fate remained a cold knot in her stomach, a constant companion amidst the bewildering elegance. The ceremony itself was a spectacle of elven grandeur, held in a smaller, more intimate chamber woven from living silverwood and infused with ancient pulsating magic. Whispers, like the rustle of leaves in a hidden grove, rippled through the gathered nobility, their eyes sharp and assessing, dissecting Anya's every move, every breath. She felt their scorn, their barely concealed disdain for the human girl elevated to their ranks, a commoner now poised to share their king's throne. The air was thick with unspoken judgments, a palpable tension that made her skin prickle beneath the heavy, unfamiliar silks. This was not a celebration, but a stark political declaration, a cold forging of alliances, and Anya, despite her regal attire, felt acutely aware of her fragile, precarious position, an outsider in a world of ancient power. Liraean stood before her, a majestic figure carved from myth and power, his expression a carefully constructed mask of regal detachment. The Elven High Chancellor, ancient and austere, recited the vows in a language that flowed like water over stones, binding them not by affection, but by duty, by pact, by the survival of the verdant court. Anya's hand, still calloused from her former life, trembled slightly as she reached for the glowing quill, signing her name on the parchment, sealing her fate with a single stroke. The act was devoid of warmth, a cold, precise transaction witnessed by the silent, watchful eyes of the court. Each signature a nail hammered into the coffin of her old life, and the foundation of an uncertain, perilous new one. Anya's gaze, though mostly fixed on the king, inadvertently swept across the assembled nobles. She caught the venomous glare of Lady Arian, a prominent elven matriarch whose family had long vied for closer ties to the throne. Arian's lips, usually curved in an elegant, if insincere, smile, were now pressed into a thin, white line, her eyes burning with undisguised contempt and a bitter resentment that seemed to radiate across the chamber. The implications were clear. This human queen, this unexpected disruption to their ancient order, would face a relentless campaign of sabotage and humiliation. Arian's palpable animosity was a stark reminder that the battle for acceptance had only just begun, a silent promise of future trials that would test Anya's resolve to its very limits. Amidst the glittering opulence and the piercing gazes, Anya's mind briefly drifted to her village, to the faces of her family, worn by hardship and shadowed by debt. A wave of bittersweet relief washed over her, knowing that her sacrifice, however painful, had secured their freedom from the crushing burden. The blight would lift, their fields would heal, and they would no longer live under the constant threat of starvation or the dark fae's malevolent reach. Yet, the thought was tinged with a profound sadness. She was now a world away, a queen in name, but forever separated from the life she knew, bound to a destiny she hadn't chosen. Her heart ached with the weight of both liberation and an isolating, irreversible solitude. As the High Chancellor concluded the rites, Liraean turned to Anya, his movement deliberate, his eyes, though still guarded, holding an inscrutable depth. Before the entire court, he extended a hand, his fingers long and elegant, a gesture of public claiming. Anya's breath hitched as her calloused fingers met his, the contact a jolt of unexpected warmth and a strange, almost electric current that coursed through her arm. It was a fleeting touch, purely ceremonial, yet the intensity of his gaze, the subtle pressure of his thumb against her skin, transcended the formality. In that brief, charged moment, an unspoken connection sparked, a silent acknowledgement that this union, though forced, held an undeniable and dangerous potential, a promise of something far more intricate than mere political alliance. Then came the final act, the sealing of the pact. Lirayan leaned in, his scent of ancient forests and cold moonlight enveloping her. His lips, cool and firm, met hers in a kiss that was meant to be purely symbolic, a public display of ownership and commitment. Yet, as their mouths met, a strange, undeniable current surged between them. It was not a kiss of passion, but of power, of a nascent, dangerous tension. For a split second, Anya felt a flicker of something raw and untamed beneath his regal composure, a depth of emotion that surprised and unnerved her. The touch lingered, a fraction of a moment longer than strictly necessary, a silent tremor passing between them, witnessed by the watchful eyes of the court. When Lirayan finally pulled away, his eyes met hers, and in their emerald depths, Anya saw not just the king, but a profound, almost desperate vulnerability that belied his formidable facade. The kiss, meant to be a cold formality, had ignited a spark, a dangerous understanding that transcended their forced union. It was a silent promise of a future far more complex and emotionally perilous than she had ever imagined. A realization that this political marriage would not remain confined to the dictates of convenience. This agreement, sealed with a touch and a gaze that spoke volumes, was already beginning to unravel, twisting into something irrevocably personal, irrevocably intense, and utterly beyond their control. The days that followed the binding ceremony blurred into a bewildering kaleidoscope of Elven customs and expectations, each demanding a piece of Anya's already fractured self. She navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the verdant court, a ghost in her own gilded cage, observing the intricate dance of power and politics with a quiet intensity. Lirayan, ever the monarch, moved through his realm with an almost ethereal grace, his presence a constant, formidable anchor in her new reality. Yet even amidst the grandeur, she felt his eyes on her, a persistent, watchful gaze that carried an unspoken weight, a silent acknowledgement of the dangerous currents that now bound their fates, weaving an intricate tapestry of mutual observation and burgeoning, unsettling awareness. Their interactions, initially formal and strictly ceremonial, began to fray at the edges, revealing subtle glimpses of the individuals beneath the crowns. During state dinners, Lirayan would occasionally offer a quiet explanation of a complex Fey custom, his voice a low, resonant hum meant only for her, a gesture of inclusion that warmed a forgotten corner of Anya's heart. Once, during a lesson on ancient Elven lore, he found her struggling with a particularly convoluted prophecy, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips as he gently corrected her, his elegant fingers brushing hers as he pointed to the intricate script. That fleeting contact, a small spark in the vastness of the court, sent a shiver through Anya, a silent question echoing in the chambers of her mind. Was this truly just a pretense, or was something deeper, more perilous, beginning to stir between them? The court, however, remained a viper's nest of simmering resentment. Lady Arian, her eyes like chips of frozen malice, led the charge, her whispers growing bolder, louder, echoing through the grand halls. During a gathering of minor nobles, Arian, with a saccharine smile that didn't reach her eyes, questioned Anya's understanding of a delicate diplomatic matter, subtly implying her ignorance and human inadequacy. Our queen consort, being new to our ways, naturally requires much guidance, she purred, her gaze sweeping the room, inviting their shared scorn. Anya felt the familiar sting of humiliation, the burning shame of being deemed unworthy, a feeling that had plagued her since her debt-ridden childhood. The air grew thick with unspoken judgments, a palpable weight pressing down on her. Before Anya could even formulate a response, Lyraen's voice, sharp and laced with an icy command, cut through the tension. "Lady Arian, the Queen's counsel on matters of human politics is invaluable, a perspective our ancient court often lacks." His gaze, like emerald daggers, pierced Arian, silencing her instantly. He then turned to Anya, his expression softening imperceptibly, a silent reassurance passing between them. "Perhaps, my queen, you could elaborate on the human perspective regarding the border settlements." His subtle defense, a public affirmation of her worth and intelligence, was a balm to Anya's wounded spirit, a powerful declaration that rippled through the stunned court, establishing her authority and his unwavering support. The aftermath of Lyraen's defense left Anya reeling, a strange mix of gratitude and a burgeoning, unsettling warmth blossoming in her chest. His words, delivered with such unwavering authority, had not only silenced her detractors, but had also elevated her, imbuing her with a confidence she hadn't known she possessed. She replayed the scene in her mind, the way his eyes had met hers, the subtle shift in his demeanor, and the unmistakable protectiveness in his tone. The question, "Are we really just pretending?" now resonated with a new, dangerous intensity. This was more than a political maneuver. It was a personal intervention, a moment where the lines between duty and a nascent, terrifying affection began to blur, forcing her to confront the unsettling reality of their evolving bond. Their shared daily routine began to foster an unexpected intimacy. Lyraen, true to his word, dedicated hours to teaching her, patiently explaining the intricacies of Elven lore, the delicate balance of their magical ecosystem, and the history of their ancient feuds. During these sessions, often held in a secluded chamber overlooking the moonlit gardens, their knees would sometimes brush, or his hand would rest briefly on hers as he guided her through a complex map of the realms. These small, incidental touches, charged with unspoken electricity, built a quiet tension between them, a silent acknowledgement of the undeniable pull that defied the cold, political nature of their union, drawing them closer with each passing, perilous moment. One afternoon, while Lyraen was deep in conversation with a young, strikingly handsome elven diplomat, Anya observed the easy camaraderie between them, the shared laughter that seemed to exclude her. A sudden, unexpected pang of something akin to jealousy tightened her chest, a feeling she hadn't realized she was capable of experiencing for him. She watched his profile, the way the light caught his hair, and felt a strange, possessive ache she couldn't rationalize. It was a fleeting, uncomfortable realization that her emotions were becoming dangerously entangled, moving beyond the carefully constructed boundaries of their political pact, venturing into the treacherous territory of genuine, if unacknowledged, desire. The Council, a collection of ancient, unyielding elven lords and ladies, continued their campaign of subtle sabotage. During a formal address to the court, Lord Valerius, a venerable but notoriously prejudiced elder, subtly questioned Anya's human frailty and her supposed inability to grasp the profound magical complexities required of a true elven queen. His words, cloaked in polite concern, were a thinly veiled attack on her origins, designed to undermine her authority and expose her as an outsider. The tension in the room thickened, a palpable current of disdain and judgment directed squarely at Anya, threatening to engulf her in a wave of ancient elven prejudice. This time, Lyraen's response was not merely a defense, but a powerful, unequivocal declaration. He rose from his throne, his voice resonating with an unassailable authority that made the ancient stones of the hall tremble. "Lord Valerius," he stated, his eyes blazing with a cold fury, "the Queen's strength is not measured by her bloodline, but by her spirit, her resilience, and her unwavering dedication to this court. Her unique perspective, forged in hardship, is precisely what our realm requires to navigate these fractured times. Any who question her worth, question mine." His words, a thunderclap of royal decree, silenced all dissent, a public sealing of his unwavering commitment, leaving no doubt about her irrefutable position by his side. Later that evening, in the quiet solitude of the royal library, Anya found Liraen poring over ancient texts, his brow furrowed with the burdens of kingship. She approached him, a silent understanding passing between them. He looked up, his emerald eyes meeting hers, and in their depths she saw a weariness that belied his formidable strength, a glimpse of the man beneath the crown. There was no need for words. The shared glance, the subtle tilt of his head, acknowledged the precarious dance they performed, the thin line between duty and a growing dangerous intimacy. The question of whether they were truly just pretending no longer felt like a question, but a shared, unspoken truth, heavy with unspoken desires and the terrifying potential of their evolving bond. Anya saw a new vulnerability in him, a profound loneliness that mirrored her own. She began to understand the immense weight he carried, the relentless pressure to maintain stability in a fracturing world. During one quiet moment, she found him staring out at the moonlit gardens, his shoulders slumped with a burden she could almost feel. She instinctively reached out, her hand hovering, then gently resting on his arm. The contact was brief, a spark of unexpected comfort, and he turned, his eyes searching hers, a silent gratitude passing between them. It was a moment of profound connection, a shared recognition of their mutual solitude, and the unexpected solace they found in each other's presence, a bond forged in the crucible of their shared, perilous destiny. Yet, even as their unspoken bond deepened, the relentless machinations of the court continued, and a new, formidable pressure began to mount. The ancient council, emboldened by the whispers of disloyal nobles and the escalating threat of the Dark Fae, presented Liraen with an ultimatum. The time had come to secure the lineage, to formalize their union beyond mere political convenience. They demanded a royal consecration, a ceremony steeped in ancient magic, designed to bless a future heir, to solidify his reign, and to publicly bind Anya not just as queen consort, but as the mother of the next Elven king. The weight of this new expectation of a bond that demanded far more than pretense settled heavily upon them, threatening to unravel the delicate tapestry of their evolving, forbidden connection. The council's ultimatum for a royal consecration had ripped a gaping chasm between Anya and Liraen, shattering the delicate equilibrium they had painstakingly built. He had retreated into a chilling silence, his eyes, once pools of enigmatic depth, now shadowed with an unshared burden that made him seem utterly distant, unreachable. Anya interpreted his withdrawal as a painful confirmation that their burgeoning connection was, indeed, nothing more than a fragile illusion, a pretense he could no longer maintain under the crushing weight of his duties. She felt the chill of his emotional retreat, like a physical sensation, a painful reminder of her past worthlessness. This profound silence, however, spoke volumes, hinting at a deeper, more profound struggle within him, a secret he feared to reveal, one that threatened to unravel their very existence. The relentless pressure intensified, and Liraen's usual regal composure, a mask of unyielding strength, began to fray at the edges. One evening, a sharp, uncharacteristic snap at a loyal elven servant startled the entire court, a rare crack in his formidable facade. Anya observed this alarming shift, feeling the immense weight of the kingdom's desperate demands pressing not only on him, but, by extension, on her. She attempted to approach him, to offer a quiet word of support, but he recoiled. His face a grim mask of internal conflict, his emerald eyes clouded with an impenetrable sorrow. His touch, once a subtle comfort that had secretly thrilled her, was now deliberately withheld, creating a profound and aching emptiness between them. She felt the familiar sting of rejection, a deep, resonant ache from her debt-ridden past, making her heart clench with renewed pain. Finally, in the hushed solitude of his private study, Lyron confronted Anya, not with anger, but with a haunted, desperate look that sent a shiver down her spine. He revealed the true, chilling nature of the demanded royal consecration. It was not merely about securing an heir. It was irrevocably tied to an ancient Fey prophecy, a terrifying magical imperative demanding a child be conceived by the next full moon. Failure, he explained, would unleash a catastrophic magical blight, a force capable of consuming the entire verdant court. Making her blighted village's plight seem trivial in comparison, this brutal revelation shattered Anya's world, confirming her deepest fear. She was still a pawn, her body a vessel for a desperate, magical solution, not a partner in a blossoming, dangerous affection. Anya's voice, though trembling with a bitter sense of betrayal, found a surprising strength. "Was I ever truly more than a means to an end?" she demanded, her eyes burning with unshed tears. A magical incubator, a human sacrifice cloaked in royal silks. Lyraen, in turn, revealed his own profound torment, the agonizing moral dilemma he had faced, sacrificing his personal desires, even his very soul, for the survival of his people. He confessed, his voice raw with a vulnerability she had never witnessed, that the thought of truly losing her, of reducing her to merely a function, tore him apart. "I never intended to feel this," he whispered, his gaze pleading, "but you have become essential, more than just a queen, Anya." His declarations of a desperate, forbidden affection hung heavy in the air, a dangerous truth. The truth of the prophecy and Lyraen's desperate, almost broken confession threw them into an agonizing turmoil. Anya found herself torn between the burgeoning, unwelcome feelings she harbored for him and the crushing realization that their bond, at its core, remained a profound sacrifice. A part of her, seeing his immense pain and impossible burden, yearned to console him, to stand by him, to offer the solace he so desperately needed. But another part, the girl who had been sold once before, screamed in silent protest against this new, more insidious form of bondage, a fate where her very essence was a means to an end. They stood on the precipice, their carefully constructed world of political convenience crumbling under the immense weight of genuine emotion and a terrifying magical imperative. The choice that loomed before them was stark and agonizing: accept this ultimate, deeply personal sacrifice, or break apart, potentially dooming his kingdom to a catastrophic blight and shattering her own fragile, newfound sense of self. The day of the royal consecration dawned, a heavy shroud of unspoken dread hanging over the verdant court. The grand hall filled with the entire court, their faces a mixture of eager anticipation and sharp scrutiny. Anya stood beside Lyraen, her hand clasped in his, a fragile connection amidst the overwhelming pressure. The High Chancellor stepped forward, his voice booming as he began the ancient rites, hinting at the profound announcement to follow, one that would irrevocably alter the fate of their realm and their own intertwined destinies. If you've made it this far, you're already part of this community. Subscribe so you don't miss any story. The choice that loomed before them was stark and agonizing. Accept this ultimate, deeply personal sacrifice, or break apart, potentially dooming his kingdom to a catastrophic blight and shattering her own fragile, newfound sense of self. The day of the royal consecration dawned, a heavy shroud of unspoken dread hanging over the verdant court. The grand hall filled with the entire court, their faces a mixture of eager anticipation and sharp scrutiny. Anya stood beside Lyrian, her hand clasped in his, a fragile connection amidst the overwhelming pressure. The High Chancellor stepped forward, his voice booming as he began the ancient rites, hinting at the profound announcement to follow, one that would irrevocably alter the fate of their realm and their own intertwined destinies. If you've made it this far, you're already part of this community. Subscribe so you don't miss any story. The air in the grand hall crackled with an almost unbearable tension as the High Chancellor's voice, a resonant drone of ancient fey magic, built towards the pivotal moment. Lyrian's hand, clasping Anya's, felt cold yet firm, a lifeline in the swirling vortex of expectation and dread. His emerald eyes, usually a fortress of unyielding resolve, now held a visible tremor, a profound conflict warring within their depths. He glanced at the expectant faces of his council, at Lady Arian's triumphant sneer, and then his gaze locked onto Anya's, searching, pleading. The weight of his kingdom's survival, the threat of the encroaching blight, pressed down on him, demanding the ultimate sacrifice, yet the unspoken truth of his heart cried out against it. The moment of decision had arrived, poised on the knife edge of duty and an awakening, terrifying love. Then, with a sudden, decisive intake of breath that seemed to pull the very air from the room, Lyrian tightened his grip on Anya's hand and stepped forward, his voice cutting through the Chancellor's chant like a blade. "Stop!" His command, raw and unyielding, echoed through the stunned silence, vibrating through the ancient stones of the hall. "And I will not sacrifice my queen, nor will I condemn her to a fate she did not choose, merely to appease a prophecy born of fear." His eyes, now blazing with a fierce emerald light, swept across the aghast faces of his council. "Anya is not a vessel for a magical solution, but the heart of this court, and my heart. If we are to face this blight, we will do so as equals, as partners, bound by choice, not by ancient decree." Anya's breath hitched. A gasp trapped in her throat as Lyrian's words, a public declaration of defiance and an unexpected, overwhelming confession of love, washed over her. Her eyes, wide with disbelief and a burgeoning, fierce hope, met his. In that moment, the years of quiet desperation, of feeling worthless and unseen, shattered. He had chosen her, truly chosen her, not just her utility. A warmth, profound and terrifying, bloomed in her chest, obliterating the chill of fear. She squeezed his hand, a silent affirmation of her own choice, a defiant acceptance of the dangerous, exhilarating path he had just carved for them both. The council murmured in outrage, but their voices were distant, muted by the thunder of her own beating heart, now irrevocably tethered to his. Lyrian turned fully to Anya, his eyes, once guarded, now alight with a fierce devotion that silenced all dissent. Before the entire, aghast court, he pulled her close, his lips no longer cool and formal but warm and insistent, meeting hers in a kiss that was a promise, a challenge, and an undeniable declaration. It was a kiss that sealed their bond not in political convenience, but in a profound, soul-stirring love, a defiant act witnessed by every shocked noble. Lady Arian's face contorted in a mask of pure fury, a silent scream of thwarted ambition, as the court erupted in a cacophony of gasps and outraged whispers. But Lyrian's embrace, Anya realized, was an unyielding shield, protecting her from their scorn, cementing her place irrevocably by his side, not just as queen, but as his chosen. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of stunned silence. Then furious outrage from the most conservative factions of the council, led by a sputtering Lord Valerius. He bellowed about ancient laws and the impending blight, accusing Lyrian of reckless abandon. But Lyrian, His hands, still firmly clasped in Anya's, stood tall, his regal presence now imbued with a new, unshakable authority born of conviction. He declared that their unity, forged in genuine affection and mutual respect, would be the true magic to defend the realm, not a forced ritual. His unwavering resolve, his fierce gaze daring anyone to challenge them, slowly quelled the dissent. The court, though still reeling, recognized the unassailable power of a king who had finally chosen his queen with his entire being, altering the very fabric of their destiny. In the weeks that followed, a fragile but profound peace began to settle over the verdant court. The magical blight, though still a threat, receded, its malevolent advance stalled by an unexpected surge of protective fey magic, a resonance that seemed to emanate from Lyrian and Anya's unified presence. The dark fey, having lost their claim and witnessing the king's newfound strength, retreated into the shadows, their plans for vengeance momentarily thwarted. Anya, no longer a pawn, but a queen by choice and by love, began to truly find her voice, her insights into the human world proving invaluable in forging new treaties and understanding the delicate balance between realms. Their union, once a calculated risk, had blossomed into an unbreakable alliance, not just for their kingdoms, but for their very souls. Their shared moments, once stolen and fraught with unspoken tension, now flowed with an easy intimacy. Lyrian, shedding the heavy cloak of his profound loneliness, found solace and strength in Anya's quiet resilience. They walked the moonlit gardens hand in hand, discussing matters of state with a shared purpose, but also whispering dreams of a future unburdened by ancient prophecies. The court, though still wary, slowly began to accept their unique queen, witnessing her unwavering dedication and Lyrian's profound respect for her. The deep chasm between their worlds had not vanished, but it was being bridged, brick, by the powerful, unexpected love that had blossomed in the most desperate of circumstances, creating a bond that resonated through the very heart of the verdant court. Anya often found herself gazing at Lyran, seeing not just the formidable king, but the vulnerable man who had dared to choose love over duty, transforming both their lives. Their discussions now turned to the future, not just of their kingdom, but of their shared life. Whispers of a journey to the sun-drenched human lands, a belated honeymoon, mingled with the quiet anticipation of a new legacy, an heir born not of political necessity, but of a profound, enduring love. They spoke of building a future where their two worlds could intertwine, where humanity and Fae could coexist in harmony, a testament to the impossible connection they had forged. Their story, once steeped in desperation, had become a vibrant tapestry of hope, woven with threads of shared dreams and an unbreakable bond. Their love, a beacon against the encroaching shadows, defied ancient feuds and forged a new dawn. This story ends, but there are many more waiting for you, eager to transport you into realms of impossible passions and epic destinies. The next chapter of our community's journey will delve into a chilling new mystery. La próxima semana, un antiguo juramento olvidado enfrentará algo aún más peligroso, amenazando la frágil paz que Lyrian y Anya han luchado tanto por construir. Don't miss it, as the stakes will be higher and the challenges even more profound. Continuing the saga of epic romances in our channel. They'll like if this story captivated you, allowing our community to grow and share more incredible tales. Suscríbete para la próxima epic adventure and become a part of our ever-expanding family of romance enthusiasts. Comenta qué momento te impactó más, sharing your thoughts and connecting with fellow subscribers. In the tapestry of fate, some threads are meant to intertwine forever.